I mentioned on Monday morning the Brady roast that I witnessed in person. Felt like a therapy session for the New England Patriots. Like there's a bunch of stuff everybody got off their chest. There's always a germ of truth and a really well-crafted, well-told joke. And I heard a million of them that night. Albert, what did you think of that?
Do you think he admitted to Deflategate, or
you know what? We talked about that as well. I always thought he did it. You know, to be honest with you, and I always thought he did it, and I always thought, like, what's the big deal? Like, I never ever thought that. But if you want to relitigate Deflategate or remember it, it was right before the Super Bowl. It was on the heels of Spygate, when everybody thought that the Patriots had gotten away with something, and the league abetted it by destroying all the tapes. And here was something again. And even though it kind of sent everybody crazy, news networks sent their network television sent their news divisions to grill Belichick, and the league handed it off to Ted Wells as an investigation to put it in a box before the Super Bowl week, so that wasn't going to be all over the Super Bowl week. And I always thought, if Brady had done it, I thought he did it the entire time. Everybody seemed to forget the ball that was initially placed in for evidence was intercepted. You know, it's like, you know, it's just like, so it wasn't a perfect system. Who cares? It was
the same argument as Spygate, right? Like, which was, with Spygate, it was like, so we're supposed to believe that Bill, who has everything down to the detail, who rushed for 432 yards in 1943 when half the NFL was over fighting the war, right? Like, knows all of that, but somehow missed what his camera people were doing, right? It was the same sort of argument. It's like, all these quarterbacks are so anal about their footballs, right? About the balls and how they're conditioned and everything else, and yet the greatest quarterback of all time just had no idea. It didn't match up.
It didn't compute, you know? But
I'm with you because I think that the whole thing there was always, it's like, he may if this news had broken in March, he might have just admitted to it, but he couldn't at the time, and then things got so complicated,
haywire
that all of a sudden he became like a cornered animal. Well, what's a cornered animal do? A cornered animal fights, right?
Well, sure, especially if they're taking his cell phone, and suddenly now there's depositions being taken because you had to hand it off to an investigator to put it into a box so everybody could show up at the Super Bowl and say, can't talk about it, there's an investigation going on, and then the investigation took on its own life. But be that as it may, I was kind of referring to, you know, Brady and Belichick and Gronk and Edelman and all of that stuff. And then the Kraft moment of doing a shot with Belichick, which seemed even too soon there still, right? I mean,
it seems like Bill, I think Bill kind of conveyed two things. Number one, he did not like the Apple TV documentary. And number two, this is taking, like, his relationship with Kraft seems to have taken on a Jerry Jimmy dynamic, where sometimes they can be polite for the cameras, but there's still a lot of feelings there, you know? And honestly, like, that's why I think the documentary, and there were elements of it I liked, but like, that's why I thought the documentary was way too soon. I mean, like Bledsoe, for example, right? Like, the reason Drew was so good on the documentary, and one of the reasons I think Drew, I don't know, you were sitting there, like, was Drew like the best of the night? Like, he might have been, right?
Well, I mean, of the players, it was just great to see. First of all, he was the first, so he had that benefit. Yeah. And secondly, he had the largest axe to actually grind. You know what I'm saying? Right. And for him to say what he said to Brady was fun and funny, and the way he did it was great. And, you know, obviously him talking about his 28th wedding anniversary and all of that stuff was kind of mind-blowing at the time, because he was the first of one of his former teammates to go there. So sure, you know, he had.
But here's the key to that, though. The reason I brought him up, right, Rich? What else does he have? He has perspective. He's had over 20 years to, like, let this whole thing breathe. He's been able to compartmentalize it. You know what I mean? Like, with a lot of these things, the wounds are still fresh, you know? like in the documentary, like the wounds are still fresh. Like Bledsoe has the sort of has had the benefit of having the time to let the whole thing breathe and to compartmentalize it and deal with it mentally. He had the same benefit, like, you know, in talking for the doc and being up there on the stage on Sunday night that the Bulls had, right? And talking and sitting down and talking for the Last Dance.
Yes.
Right. All these people have all this time to give it perspective, and they've probably been able to kind of put those things on the shelf in the proper place in their lives, and they're not still grappling with them.
So are you just to jump in here, are you going in this direction? This is interesting because we didn't talk about this, guys, the other day either, that the safe space of a roast allowed for more revealing comments to be said amongst each other than the Apple TV documentary, sitting down and having a director just ask a one-on-one question. Like, did we actually witness that? Is that what actually we're saying right now?
I mean, Bill was taking shots at Danny Amendola's production. I know it was a joke, but he was like, you know, he had 250 yards this year, 200 yards this year, or what Randy Moss calls a good first half.
You know, like, and what was it, you know, the success, who is it, you know, who had the best part in the success? Was it me? Was it you? Well, it was both of us because of me.
Right.
You know?
Well, Amendola had the sharp, like, did Amendola have the sharpest knives in the dock, would you say?
Seemed like he was pretty pissed.
He was like, he seemed pissed in the dock.
So, like,
it
unbelievable.
Didn't seem like so much of a coincidence that was a guy Bill kind of went after, was it? Or maybe it was. I don't know.
I feel like
he went after Danny pretty good.
In the same way that you're wondering, did Brady really, cop to Deflategate? Who knows what really was intended, but I'm just joking, or just, again, a good idea for a joke because everybody's been talking about this being a fault line in a relationship this entire time. I really was just loving that. I mean, that was totally an undercurrent part of this roast. And then, of course, there was just the brilliant comedy of Nikki Glaser and Tony Hinchcliffe.
She's great,
and
too,
Kevin Hart. You know, by the way, we had a great reveal yesterday. You can tell that when we spoke to Todd Bowles, and I asked him if he saw the roast. He said he's a huge Nikki Glaser fan. And then we put this out in a reel, and Nikki Glaser responded on our page with a mind-blown emoji.
So
Talk about how a roast can bring people together. I mean, it's kind of wild. But yeah, I honestly thought that this, not to go too deep here, but I honestly felt like I was seeing a therapy session, a bunch of stuff getting off the chest. And you've been there.
Part of it is like, again, like I think a part of it is that the wounds are still open in some cases, you know, like if you have the time to put everything in proper perspective, you're probably a little bit more like Drew was up there, where, you know, Drew's jokes, like Drew seemed like good natured, you know, like on a night where everything might have had like this undercurrent of truth, you know, like, again, Drew had the chance to put everything in perspective. And I think he may be the one person who spoke who had the chance to do that. Whereas like for everybody else, like it's not like they happened yet. These things happened yesterday, but they're still like close enough in your periphery where credit for everything is still being kind of divvied up, and who was responsible for this and who was responsible for that. You know, a lot of times, like if you don't have the benefit of time to sort all those things out, the wounds are still open. I think we saw those open wounds on Sunday night.
Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.